must recognize product stage when evaluating PMs. And when you do that, many problems go away. PM role is actually quite different, and the PM skill sets are very different. Capabilities are very different across different product stages. But when a company gets sufficiently large, it tries to create this one ladder and one set of criteria that every PM at a certain level must or may need to satisfy. And that's a grave mistake. Okay. So I think some of you are familiar with this 3X framework. I'm just going to do a quick recap of what it is. It's by Kent Beck. I think this framework is one of the fundamental frameworks every PM needs to understand. And certainly every PM leader needs to understand. So Kent Beck says that a product can be in one of three stages: explore, expand, and extract. And somewhere here is that like magical product market fit moment. One other way of looking at it is like explore is 0 to 1. I actually think it's more like 0 to 5 or 0 to 10. Then expand is 1 to 60 or 1 to 30, 1 to 50, that order of magnitude. And extract is the rest. Now notice time is not to scale. When you plot the time axis to scale, this is what it looks like for a product that actually reaches the extract. By the way, most products don't reach the extract stage. In fact, most products don't even reach the expand stage, right? They die before that. But for the ones that do, this is what the time, with time to scale looks like with proper scale. This is very important to understand because of this next slide, which is if the y-axis is business metrics, right? And the x-axis is time to scale, then the area under this blue curve is the business value that we accrued. The area under the blue curve is significantly greater than the area under the red and green combined. Okay, so from a strategy perspective, it's very important to understand this because basically most of the actual value of your product will be accrued during the expand stage or extract stage, the blue stuff. So Google AdWords has been in the extract stage since, 2007 or 2008 or 2010, something like that. So if you look at the Google's revenues, in the expand stage, were like pretty great, like post IPO, etc. But they pale in comparison to Google's revenues over the past 10 years through the AdWords business. Now, here's the interesting thing. This blue stage often only happens because of some really profound insights and some really great creative execution in the green stage and the red stage, in the explore and expand stage. So I'm not saying one stage is more important than the other, but I am saying that you only have the luxury of being in the blue stage and accruing all this value under the curve if you have done many things right and different in the green and red, explore and expand. Few other ideas. When it comes to execution in the explore stage, iteration is important. You need to be able to iterate quickly. When it comes to execution in the expand stage, removing bottlenecks, reducing bottlenecks is important. And when it comes to execution in the extract stage, increasing throughput is important. When it comes to strategy, explore stage is more about increasing your learning. Expand stage is more about creating massive differentiation. Google AdWords has massive differentiation. And extract stage is about reducing inefficiencies through strategy. Because at that scale, if you reduce inefficiencies, the payoff is massive. OKRs are going to look different based on stage. In the explore stage, you should likely have largely qualitative OKRs. Qualitative. In the expand stage, you should likely have a hybrid qualitative and quantitative. And in the extract stage, you should have largely quantitative OKRs. You might have a few qualitative OKRs, but largely you should have quantitative OKRs. There's a whole other topic on OKRs, but I'll tell you most issues with OKRs and bad uses of OKRs because of not understanding this one simple darn graph. What you see on this slide, 8 out of 10 people don't understand this when they're implementing OKRs, 9 out of 10 maybe. So they come up with OKRs always need to have metrics. OKRs always need to move something from metric A, point A to point B, right? And they swear by it as though it's their religion, right? Or some form of identity, right? Bullshit, right? This is a much better way of looking at it than holding on to any kind of dogma about how OKRs ought to be written. We won't spend much time on this, but I think everybody's familiar with my framework of the types of product leaders, operators, craftsperson, visionaries. There's something in there about that. Another thing to remember is that you're actually doing explore, expand, extract at each stage in this journey as well for a product. When you have a product, it's not a monolith. It's not just one journey. It's actually fractal. There are multiple explore, expand journeys within a given stage as well. So it's important to remember that. Lastly, this is my enhancement of Kent Beck's framework, which is actually, I think there's 5 stages and you can make it 7 stages or 30 stages, right? At any granularity. But the point is, there is actually this stage I've seen where like the product after its like extract phase is just existing. It looks alive sometimes, it looks dead at other times. And then there's a point at which you may even exit, right? Or you may repeat the journey. So anyway, very, very vital to remember this and understand this framework. Basically, this framework says that you need to think about PM performance along these three dimensions separately. And then there are three questions that you need to answer. One of the core things I'll point out is there is no math here. Okay. Later on, I'll show you some math. There is no math here. And that is the point. So the inputs to answering these questions are, peer reviews. The other input is the manager's assessment of the individual's performance. Another one is leadership's perception. Another one is the quantitative stuff, like the metrics, the state of the business, and various other things. So there are more objective measures here, and there are more subjective measures here. One last thing I'll say is this requires some judgment on the part of the PM manager. This is the core part of Insight, right? How well do you understand your product, users, customers, and domain? You should start talking about this with PMs on your team. Give them concrete examples of this is a gap here. If there is a gap, right? This is what I would like to see from you in terms of your understanding of your users. I feel like you are at a 6 in your understanding of the domain. I want you to be at an 8 or a 9. Here's what needs to happen. Here's what I need to see. Here's the evidence I need to see to understand that you actually have that. Here are some examples of why I feel like you're not at an 8 or a 9 on your domain understanding. And here are some resources for you to get there. This next one is about, it's not enough to understand your products, users, customers, and domain. You also need the ability to translate that understanding into compelling strategy and product proposals. But there are many people who fail between this step and this step. There are many people who understand this, but cannot do this. So all of these are part of Insight, which then leads us to execution, which is how did you deliver on your high priority ships for the evaluation period? So yes, shipping stuff is an aspect, but it's not the only thing here. This one covers your communication, collaboration, leadership. And again, this one will be largely based on peer reviews, but also the manager's assessment, right? Sometimes the PM is doing the right thing. It's the team that is having an allergic reaction. And then this is also important, right? Like the quality of what you launch. And again, this is not saying it has to be pristine quality. It has to be Apple quality. It is based on what the company's bar requires. Right? And then the impact part is interesting because like for some cases, you can't really figure out these kind of like long-term impact indicators because revenue takes time. User growth sometimes takes time, but there are leading indicators and you need to account for those leading indicators where that is true. Especially in expand stage and explore stage products, you are largely looking at leading indicators. How many deals did we sign? Now, is leading indicators perfect? No, it's not. But none of these things is perfect, right? And then lastly, there is an element about like your impact on the company, on the team, on the org that is separate perhaps from the product you manage. Like what contributions are you making to make the company better, to make the culture better, and so on. That also needs to be embedded. So in some ways, this framework can seem deceptively simple, but I guarantee you it'll take some time for you to really absorb this. Like it's not a cheat sheet. You have to really understand this stuff. Okay, so how do you put it in practice? This is roughly what I did. Transparently rate the PM on each of Insight, Execution, and Impact. In fact, do it in your career conversations. Why do you need to wait for that performance evaluation cycle to start? This is what I used to do. Like, are you exemplary on Insight? Are you exemplary on execution? Do you simply exceed? Do you simply meet? Do you miss? And this is where I was saying you can like start doing some math. And this is not a rule. None of these are rules, but you can start doing this math. Assign scores to each rating. Now, there is a philosophy in some circles, like you need to reward spikes. When somebody is exemplary at something, they're going to create a really outsized impact on that thing for your company, hopefully. So you need to reward the spikes. So what you perhaps might do is you might actually increase the weight of the exemplary or the score of the exemplary performance. So the others are 2, 1, and 0. This one's 4. One other thing to mention, before the evaluation period starts, like I would let PMs know that like, look, next quarter, if it's a quarterly, whatever, next half, for your product, the main thing I want to see is greater consumer or customer insight, because maybe it's a turnaround story, right? We are past the extract stage and now we need to turn the product around, which you can only turn around an extract stage product if you come up with new, different consumer customer insights. And if it's in the explore stage, it's similar. In parts of expand stage, it's like that. So I'll say the next 6 months are mainly about insight first. Then they are about execution. And then lastly, they're about impact. And that's how I'm going to evaluate your performance. Okay. So how do we marry Kent Beck's model to this insight, execution, impact model? So guess what? I have a table too. Now, if you're a certain scale, you could also clarify this via weights, right? Like, so for an explore stage product, usually these are not like rules. You could have different weights, but for an explore stage product, you could weigh insight as 0.5, execution as 0.3, and impact as 0.2. Not because impact is not important. It's just that it's going to be hard to figure out the impact. You can use different weights, but the idea here is once you start doing this, you can start actually objectively calculating how a person did over the last 6 months. So if they were exemplary on insight, they missed on execution, and they met on impact, you basically do this weighted average and you end up with this score, which according to my scale would be overall exceeds. They missed on execution. They were still exemplary on insight, and they are in an explore stage product. So this time around, I'm going to give them some leeway, and they end up with overall exceeds. Now, if this exemplary insight next quarter does not translate to better execution, then we have a problem. Maybe the insight is wrong or the insight is not actionable. If I know that, then I'm going to adjust the insight score next time while they're still in explore stage. So hopefully that's a practical, concrete way to go about things.